Your Ford's catalytic converter is one of the most expensive single components on your vehicle, and right now your everyday driving habits might be destroying it without you ever knowing. I have been working on Fords for 15 years, and I can tell you without hesitation that catalytic converter failure is one of the most preventable and most expensive repairs I see in my shop. A replacement catalytic converter on an F-150 or on an Explorer can run anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500 depending on the model. And in most cases, the damage was not caused by a defect or by bad luck. It was caused by the driver. That is the part nobody talks about. Ford builds solid converters. The problem is that certain driving habits that feel completely harmless, create conditions inside your exhaust system that slowly and silently destroy the converter's internal structure. By the time you notice a rattle, a sulfur smell, or a check engine light, the damage is already done. Today we are going through 6 innocent Ford driving habits that are killing your catalytic converter. Habit number 4 is one I see constantly, and most owners genuinely have no idea it is even a problem. Habit number 1 is the single most destructive thing you can do to a converter, and it happens to Ford owners every single day across the country. Pay close attention because understanding these habits could save you thousands of dollars in repairs. Let's start with number 6. Short trips that never let your engine fully warm up. This one sounds so harmless that most people laugh when I bring it up. You are just driving to the gas station, the pharmacy, maybe a quick run to grab lunch. What could possibly go wrong? The answer is a lot, and it all traces back to how a catalytic converter actually works. Your Ford's catalytic converter needs to reach a specific operating temperature to function correctly. That temperature is roughly 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that threshold, the chemical reactions inside the converter that neutralize harmful exhaust gases simply do not occur efficiently. The converter is essentially just sitting in the exhaust stream, cold and inactive, while raw hydrocarbons and unburned fuel pass straight through it. On short trips, your engine never fully reaches operating temperature, which means your converter never reaches operating temperature either. That unburned fuel passes through the exhaust and coats the converter's internal honeycomb structure with a layer of carbon and hydrocarbon residue. One short trip will not cause visible damage, but weeks and months of daily short trips create a progressive buildup inside the converter that permanently clogs the substrate. I have pulled catalytic converters from Fords owned by people who only drove in the city, short distances every day, and the inside looked like the inside of a chimney, black, sooty, and completely choked. The converter was not damaged by heat. It was smothered by the cold residue of 1,000 short trips that never burned clean. The fix is straightforward. If you drive short distances regularly, take your Ford on a longer highway drive at least once a week. 20 minutes of sustained highway driving at normal operating temperature burns off that residue and keeps the converter clean. Think of it as preventive maintenance that costs nothing but a bit of your time. Number 5 is one that surprises every single owner I mention it to: ignoring a misfiring engine. A misfire feels like a small problem. Maybe your Ford stumbles a little at idle, hesitates under acceleration, or you feel a slight shudder through the drivetrain. Most people think, I'll get that checked out eventually. I'll keep driving it for now. That decision is one of the most expensive mistakes a Ford owner can make when it comes to converter health. Here is why a misfire is so catastrophic for your catalytic converter. When a cylinder misfires, unburned raw fuel enters the exhaust stream. That raw fuel travels down the exhaust pipe and arrives at the catalytic converter where it ignites. The converter is not designed to serve as a combustion chamber. The temperatures generated by burning raw fuel inside the converter can reach well over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The converter's internal honeycomb structure is made of a ceramic substrate coated with precious metals, including platinum, palladium, and rhodium. At 2,000 plus degrees Fahrenheit, that ceramic substrate melts. It collapses internally, blocking exhaust flow and destroying the converter completely. I have seen F-150s and Mustangs come in where a single ignored misfire turned a $200 ignition coil replacement into a $2,500 repair job that included the converter, the coil, and in some cases, a replacement oxygen sensor. The check engine light that most people dismiss as a minor inconvenience was screaming about the exact condition that was destroying the converter in real time. The rule I tell every Ford owner is this: a misfire is never a small problem. Any hesitation, stumble, or shudder needs to be diagnosed immediately. A diagnostic scan costs $100 or less at most shops. That $100 can prevent you from spending $3,000 on a converter replacement. If your check engine light is on and the code comes back as a misfire on any cylinder, stop driving and get it fixed. Your converter will thank you. Number 4, using the wrong oil or skipping oil changes. This habit is so widespread that it genuinely keeps me in business. Ford owners who run the wrong oil viscosity or push oil changes far beyond the recommended interval are quietly contaminating their exhaust system in a way that destroys catalytic converters over time. Most people do not realize that engine oil health directly affects catalytic converter health. Here's the connection. When engine oil breaks down from heat and use, it loses its ability to properly lubricate and seal the combustion chamber. Degraded oil gets past piston rings and valve seals and enters the combustion process. When oil burns in the combustion chamber, it produces phosphorus and zinc compounds in the exhaust stream. These compounds are catalyst poisons. They coat the active precious metal sites inside your catalytic converter and permanently deactivate them. Once those sites are poisoned, the converter can no longer perform the chemical reactions it was designed for. The converter may look fine from the outside, but internally it is dead. Ford specifies particular oil viscosities for good reason. Using the wrong viscosity causes increased oil consumption and blow bypass the rings, which sends more oil into the combustion chamber and more poisoning compounds into the exhaust. The 5W30 or 5W20 spec is not a suggestion, it is a precision requirement. On turbocharged EcoBoost engines, this is even more critical. The turbocharger runs at extreme temperatures and requires full synthetic oil of the correct viscosity to maintain proper sealing. Owners who use conventional oil or the wrong grade in their EcoBoost are dramatically accelerating oil degradation and converter poisoning. The solution is simple. Follow Ford's recommended oil type and change intervals exactly. For most modern Fords, that means full synthetic oil at the grade specified in your owner's manual, changed according to the Intelligent Oil Life Monitor, rather than an arbitrary 5,000-mile schedule. If your oil monitor says it is time, change it. Do not push it another 1,000 miles. The cost difference between an on-time oil change and a damaged converter is roughly $3,400. Number 3, aggressive cold starts and immediately flooring the throttle. Every morning, thousands of Ford owners start their engine and immediately drive hard. They pull out of the driveway, hit the gas, and merge onto the highway at full throttle before the engine has had time to reach operating temperature. This habit feels perfectly normal. The engine responds, the vehicle accelerates, everything seems fine. But this behavior is silently damaging your catalytic converter in a way that compounds over years. During a cold start, your Ford's engine management system runs a rich fuel mixture. That means more fuel relative to air to help the engine warm up quickly. Rich conditions produce higher concentrations of hydrocarbons in the exhaust. When you immediately drive aggressively under a rich cold start condition, you are flooding the exhaust system with unburned fuel at the exact moment the converter is still cold and unable to process it. That fuel hits a cold converter substrate and coats it. But the real damage happens in the opposite direction too. Once the engine warms up and the converter reaches operating temperature, those carbon deposits from the cold start exposure create hot spots inside the substrate. Repeated thermal cycling, cold coating followed by sudden extreme heat from aggressive driving stresses the ceramic substrate and causes microscopic cracking. Over time, those cracks become fractures, the substrate crumbles internally, and you hear the dreaded rattle coming from underneath your Ford. That rattle is the sound of a converter substrate that has collapsed and is now bouncing around inside the converter housing. At that point, the converter is finished, and the only fix is replacement. The correct approach is to drive gently for the first 2 to 3 minutes after a cold start. You do not need to sit and let the engine idle for 10 minutes. Modern Ford fuel injection systems do not require that. Instead, keep engine speed below 2,500 revolutions per minute and avoid hard acceleration until your temperature gauge begins moving off the cold mark. 2 or 3 minutes of gentle driving accomplishes this. It protects the converter, reduces engine wear, and costs you absolutely nothing. Number 2, using low quality or incorrect fuel. This one generates more arguments than almost anything else I bring up, because a lot of Ford owners genuinely believe that fuel is fuel. Regular unleaded goes in, the engine runs, no problem. But what is actually happening inside your combustion chamber and exhaust system with low-quality fuel tells a very different story. Low-quality gasoline, particularly fuel from stations with high fuel turnover problems or inadequate detergent packages, burns less completely than name-brand fuel that meets top-tier standards. Incomplete combustion means more unburned hydrocarbons entering the exhaust stream. More unburned hydrocarbons reaching a hot catalytic converter means the converter works harder to process them, running at higher temperatures than it was designed for on a sustained basis. Over time, a converter that runs chronically hot from processing excess unburned fuel experiences thermal degradation. The precious metal coating on the substrate begins to sinter, meaning the microscopic particles of platinum and palladium clump together and reduce their effective surface area. Less surface area means less catalytic efficiency, which means even more unburned fuel gets through, which creates more heat. It is a compounding cycle that accelerates converter failure. For Ford owners with EcoBoost turbocharged engines, incorrect fuel octane is an additional serious concern. The 2.7 and 3.5 EcoBoost engines are designed to run on 87 octane minimum, but they produce maximum performance and cleanest combustion on 91 or 93 octane. Running regular when the engine is working hard, towing, hauling, or driving aggressively in heat creates conditions where the NOx sensors retard ignition timing to prevent detonation. Retarded timing under boost increases exhaust gas temperatures and sends more thermal stress into the converter. The practical advice here is to use top-tier certified gasoline from reputable fuel brands whenever possible, and to use the correct octane for your specific Ford engine. The price difference between regular and premium at the pump is trivial compared to the converter replacement cost. This is one of those situations where being cheap now creates an enormously expensive problem later, and now the habit that causes more catalytic converter damage than all the others combined. Number 1, ignoring small exhaust and engine leaks. This issue is responsible for so many converter replacements in my shop that I could practically predict the repair before a customer finishes telling me the symptoms. A small exhaust leak or coolant leak into the combustion system is so destructive to a catalytic converter that the damage can happen within weeks of the leak developing. Let's start with exhaust leaks. When you have a small leak in your exhaust system, air enters the exhaust stream at the leak point. That oxygen-rich air reaches the catalytic converter along with unburned hydrocarbons in the exhaust. When the converter processes that oxygen-rich exhaust, the chemical reactions run hotter than designed. Sustained over-temperature operation does not just reduce converter efficiency, it melts the substrate. I have seen converters fail in under 20,000 miles because a small exhaust leak upstream was never repaired. The symptom is usually a faint ticking sound from under the vehicle, most noticeable on cold mornings before the exhaust system warms up and the metal expands to partially seal the leak. Most owners dismiss this as normal engine noise. It is not. Coolant leaks into the combustion chamber are even more devastating. A failing head gasket or a crack to the cylinder head can allow coolant to enter the cylinder and burn along with the fuel charge. Burning coolant produces phosphates and silicates in the exhaust stream. These compounds are among the most lethal catalyst poisons known. They coat the converter substrate rapidly and irreversibly, I have personally seen a moderate head gasket leak destroy a brand new replacement converter in under 3,000 miles because the coolant leak was not diagnosed before the converter was replaced. The car came back with a new check engine code, a ruined new converter, and an owner who was furious and heartbroken at the same time. The warning signs for coolant intrusion include white smoke from the exhaust, a sweet smell from the exhaust pipe, and a gradual drop in coolant reservoir level without any visible external leak. If you see any of these signs, stop driving and get a compression test and a combustion leak test done immediately. This is not a wait-and-see situation. The lesson from both scenarios is the same. Small leaks are not small problems. Any exhaust tick, any white smoke, any unexplained coolant loss needs immediate attention. The diagnostic cost is minimal. The cost of ignoring it and destroying a catalytic converter is enormous. Your Ford's catalytic converter was built to last the life of the vehicle under normal conditions. But normal conditions require that you avoid these 6 habits. Stop running on constant short trips without giving the engine time to reach full operating temperature. Address misfires immediately instead of driving through them. Stay current on oil changes and use the correct oil specification. Warm up gently after cold starts before pushing the engine hard. Use quality fuel with the correct octane rating for your engine. Fix exhaust and coolant leaks the moment you detect them. Every one of these habits is entirely within your control. The difference between a Ford that runs 200,000 miles without a converter replacement and one that is in the shop at 90,000 miles often comes down to these 6 things. None of them require expensive modifications or special equipment. They just require knowing what to look for and taking action before small problems become catastrophic ones. If this video helped you understand your Ford better, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss the next one. Drop a comment below telling me which of these habits you have been guilty of, because I guarantee most of you are doing at least one of them right now. Share this with any Ford owner you know, because this information could save them thousands of dollars. I will see you in the next video.